Okay, Kitsiksamatsimokboa. This is going to be part one of a two-part lecture on the lunar cycle Gatoi, which is the fourth winter lunar cycle. And the word itself is a truncated word, but it basically refers to requiring assistance to eat. And I've heard two interpretations of what this word gatoi refers to in terms of that, in terms of requiring assistance to eat. On the one hand, I've heard that because the nights are so long, people would be forced to eat during the time when the sun is down and there's darkness. And at that time, if you're eating in the dark, they say that there's a chance that the ghosts will take part in your meal. And if they do, they might twist your face. And so people would hire asokanakis, special people with special gifts for healing different things. They would hire somebody with a gift to protect them, to put a protection on them so that the ghosts wouldn't twist their face when they're eating at night. And so some people say that that's what gatoi is referring to. Is referring to having to hire those asokanakis to paint them and protect them from the ghosts. But most people will tell you, most of the elders would tell you that gatoi refers to the time of winter when everybody is faced with starvation, or a lot of people are, because the food stores that were saved from summer are running out. You know, people are just simply running out of food. And there's not a lot of food to access during the winter time. So you would have to rely on relatives and others in your clan. Whoever had food stores remaining would have to be generous and allow others to sustain themselves through the hardship off those meager stores. So that's kind of more my understanding of what gatoi is referring to, the real significance of gatoi. But different people have different opinions. Here you see a slide that I used to use as an opener to this lecture. And I guess the last time I updated it was 2012, but you can see how I represent the lunar cycle as 4 lines at the beginning connected, and this is the time when the moon has disappeared, and then you get the first crescent there, you can see it, and then each night is 1 line till you get to the full moon, and then 1 line again for each night till you get to the last crescent. And the little cross figures that you see there at the tops of those lines at some places I'm just using those to mark Sundays as a reference point. And then the red one, a holiday, Valentine's Day. This was a way of writing out or representing the traditional stick count, the winter stick count, in a written form. And this form I borrowed from Bull Plume, Stomachsy Sopop, who was a turn of the century Iochgimi or Beaver Man, as was Sochski, who you see here, heavy face. This woman was a beaver woman. So what's going on phenologically during this lunar cycle? Well, the rivers are still, for the most part, all frozen over. We're still in the depths of winter. At the pond at Spopikimi, the water's sealed. The beavers, Xiskstukiks, are still stuck in that world of darkness, as are their allies, their close allies, the muskrats. This is a muskrat push-up. And earlier in the winter, when the ice was not so locked in hard, at these push-up sites, you would find the muskrat tracks coming out and going out to feed in the wet meadows. But when we get into this time of the winter, they're locked under just like the beavers. Along the rivers, of course, there's still some open water crags, and at these open water crags is where you find the bulk of the larger animal activity. You can see on the snow on the edge of this water crag all of the different tracks. Those tracks belong to not only geese, but all kinds of animals that go to visit the open water. The geese, of course, are prominent at these openings. So they will roost there, come in to roost in the evenings. You can see very dimly some of the geese in the sky moving right at twilight, right as things get really dark or start to get really dark. The geese come in by the thousands and land at these open crags, and they stay there overnight. They just line up. Ooh. Don't know why my PowerPoint's saving. I haven't changed anything. Let me just save it so that we won't have that interference again. All right. So, yeah, so the geese will line up right against the edge of the ice, and at night it's hard to see that they're even there. They just look like the edge of the ice. During the daytime, they take off. As things warm up in the morning, they all take off from the open crags, and they go up to the stubble fields on the prairie, and there they eat grain. And we cover this whole cycle during the last moon, during Misamikokomiatos, the long night's moon. But I just want to point out that they're still doing this, although we will see toward the end of this lunar cycle a little change in behavior. Also up on the stubble fields, you'll find Apinakoitsistsi. Apinakoitsistsi are the snow buntings. In Blackfoot, that name means morning birds. And for those who are familiar with the surnames, contemporary surnames on the blood reserve, you may recognize that morning bird is a family name. So somebody got a name, received a name from the snow buntings at some point, and that name is carried forth to today. I don't know the story behind it, but the name is definitely still in use. So Apinakoitsistsi, and they're usually in very large flocks on the fields, and you can see them moving around on the prairie. It's kind of clouds of birds. They can be on the ground, very camouflaged in the snow on the stubble fields. This is who knows how many snow buntings here. Many in this image. Probably a couple hundred. I'm not sure, but quite a few, and very camouflaged. Another bird of the prairies that you'll encounter quite often, in my area at least, in Cattails, is Miatsi, the horn lark. And the horn lark is it sticks around all winter, and where I usually encounter them are on the roads, on the gravel roads especially. I don't know if they're gathering seeds, but there seems to be something on the gravel roads. I'm betting it's seeds that they pick at. And as you're driving down the gravel road, these are the birds that'll shoot off in front of your vehicles. Miatsiks, horn larks. Feeding on both the Apinakoitsiks and Miatsiks are these prairie falcons, for whom there is not a remembered Blackfoot name that I've encountered, though there must have certainly been one in the past. They're a prominent bird here all year round, and they hunt smaller birds as well as rodents. So the prairie falcons. Other birds of prey that you'll see out there along the stubble fields are the rough-legged hawks. We talked about these guys already in a previous lecture. Ipaksoatsi, wide tail feathers, is their Blackfoot name. And this is one of our winter birds of prey. You don't see rough-legged hawks during the summer here. They travel up north. This is just their winter getaway, right? This is their warm place to go for winter. As to this guy, or this gal, I should say, this is a female for sure. You can tell the difference between male and female snowy owls, because the males will be much more white. They'll have much more white content. Won't have so much of this striping as the females do. So this is a female snowy owl, Apisipisto. And the snowy owls actually show up down where I'm at during the long night's moon, usually. Sometimes even a little bit earlier, but usually I don't start seeing them until at least on the prairie. And they stick around. They're around through Katoi as well. And their primary diet are voles and mice, these kind of things. This is some vole tracks here running across the snow. You can see the very distinct vole print in powdered snow. This is the meadow vole, just basically a mouse with a shortened tail, almost like a gerbil, a commercial gerbil, but it's smaller. The wild voles are smaller than commercial gerbils. Okay, so back down with the geese. During this lunar cycle, we do see the geese start to change behavior. During the previous couple of cycles, the geese's behavior is they're hanging out in clans during the day, eating in the stubble fields in clan-sized groups, which are groups of families, usually 15 birds and up. Not infrequently as many as 60, 70, sometimes even 100 birds in a clan. And at nighttime they come together as a tribe on the ice and hang out at those open crags. So what we see happen in this lunar cycle in Katoi is a little bit of a change in that clan arrangement, so that on occasion you'll run into scenarios like this. I don't know if you can see it well, but here on one of the river islands is just a small family of 4 geese. So what you start seeing in this lunar cycle is the families themselves, the goose, the gander, and their goslings from last summer, staking out areas on islands for the upcoming summer season, right? You start seeing them start to visit the nesting islands that they might be considering using in the coming year. And you'll not only see families, but those who did not succeed in the nesting of the previous year, or those who are just new couples, you'll see them out alone for the first time looking at sites for nesting. This is just that same family again. There might be 5 in this family, it looks like, actually, rather than 4. But definitely different than hanging out with a clan, all right? And you will see this happen during this lunar cycle, Katto. Also, still here, this time of year, are Gistsipimitsa'aks, the common goldeneyes. We saw them arrive at least during Misamiko Komiatos. Often, usually, I will be able to find them in Itahkanako Kotoini tests in that lunar cycle instead. So, second lunar cycle into the winter, they arrive. Like the snowy owls, they'll be leaving. And the rough-legged hawks, they'll be leaving. They're just down here. This is their warm place to go for the depths of winter. Coyotes, api siks, always on the prowl. And the deeper we get into winter, it seems, the more you will see the coyotes during the daytime making on the hunt. They're a little bit more desperate and will appear more during the daytimes, whereas other times of the year they're a lot more nocturnal. You don't see them so much during the middle of day. Upbeat Sikhs, they're called in Blackfoot. Again, looking at tracks, these are coyote tracks. This is a rock on the river ice that the coyotes have to stop and mark whenever they pass near. This is evidence of coyote eating grass, cleaning their system in this lunar cycle. I always look out for if there's a certain time of year that they most do this cleanse with the grass. These are also coyote droppings, but you can see here in the lower left-hand corner of the frame bird tracks, and you can see that there's some pieces of the coyote droppings missing, and then you see scattered little pieces of coyote droppings. That's because the magpies, in their desperation during this lunar cycle, will feed on coyote droppings and other carnivorous droppings. Whether it be canine or raccoon or human. It's desperation time for them just as much as it is for humans. So they're out there eating shit in order to survive. That's the Mamiatsikimiks, black-billed magpies. Should also be encountering Omachkeisto, the raven. So Omachkeisto in Blackfoot, the word for crows is Meisto. So Omachkeisto is the big crow. That's the raven. And, in the language, it infers that the understanding was just that this is maybe a subspecies or not even. Maybe just a large representative of crows, or considered as such in the past. Probably more thought of as kind of a subspecies. But we have ravens here year-round. However, in the winter, there seems to be more of them, I do think. Just like some of the other winter birds, I think many of the ravens here this time of year will fly north, migrate north as we move toward the summer. Ravens, of course, are revered just as crows and magpies as the most sacred of Blackfoot birds. This is the South Pond Spring at Spopikimi, still open year-round. This is where water from the river trickles in. And so, given a little bit of open water, you're going to have, of course, a little bit of animal action in the area. That spring is surrounded by a marsh full of cattails, and cattails are a plant that are, of course, useful year-round. So there's a couple of uses of it right now. You could collect the seeds, the seed heads, the fluffy seeds coming out. You can use that seed heads as they had in the past for stuffing, extra insulation in your moccasins and these kind of things, and for in moss bags, in baby moss bags. When you have a baby wrapped up in the moss bag, they'd be padded with cattails to absorb, just like diapers. These are the diapers of the past. Another part of the plant that's useful right now is just the straight stalk. And the use for that at this time of year is as a fire starting drill. If you are going to try to use fire by friction or try to create fire by friction, and you were doing the hand drill style, the hand spindle, I should say, style of fire by friction, this is one of the few pithy cord plants in the area, and you need a pithy cord plant with a very straight kind of a stalk like this to do that fire by friction with the spindle method. So out of all the plants that are available here, for instance, like burdock and bulrush, cattails, I think, are the preferable spindle, at least in my experience of trying to do fire by friction. They're straighter, and they got just the right diameter, really. Here's some sax, some ducks in the spring. Of course, this is where I will find the remaining Meeksugutsiks who didn't migrate, and they're not large in number. Those that stick around really take a risk. I've found in really cold blasts of minus 30 degrees or so, I've found ducks who have frozen to death in places like this. Some winters at Spobikimi, I even have a male belted kingfisher sticks around for the winter. And in Blackfoot, the name of this kingfisher is Apkinni, which means a white necklace. So this bird will stick around by the South Pond Spring and fetch pike minnows out of the spring. Even in the all winter long, it is stuck around. I've been able to get it on the Audubon Christmas bird count on a couple of different occasions. I think it might be the same bird that I've seen last maybe 5 years or so in a row. I saw one going into this winter too, but this current winter when I'm making this lecture, when I'm recording this, but I haven't seen it in probably at least seen or heard it in at least 2 lunar cycles. So I think it's still somewhere here along the river, but perhaps not at Spobikimi. Some years, not every year, like this year, for instance, as I'm recording this didn't happen, but last year it did. There's an event that occurs when we get a deep freeze, and for one reason or another, I think because of perhaps a lack of oxygen in the South Pond Spring, we'll end up with a die-off of northern pike, and some of them pretty large fish, and you can see a couple of them floating on the water here, getting closer. You see them underwater. When this happens, there might be 10 to 15 different fish in the South Pond Spring, large pike, eatable size, meal size, and more pike floating in that area. I didn't put the Blackfoot name on here, but Blackfoot name for pike is a buckskiomi. Buckskiomi means wide mouth fish. Last year I took one of the ones that died, and I set it out on the ice, put a game camera nearby, and got some good footage of bald eagles coming in to eat. Along the river, the cut banks, you'll see the old hollows, the cavities, the nesting cavities of bank swallows and belted kingfishers. And during the winter, there are animals who utilize these nesting cavities. So it's always worthwhile to bring a little flashlight along, a little torch, and check out the nesting cavities on the cut bank. And you never know what you'll find. One thing that I learned by doing this, for instance, is that there are insects who will use these cavities as places to hibernate. So here you see 3 drone flies. This is a drone fly using one of these caverns to hibernate. And sometimes you'll find they're just full of drone flies, and they're hibernating. Other insects you might encounter, if you turn over some logs and such, you might wake up some sidewalk carabid beetles. If the sun hits them and it's anywhere around 0 degrees, they're gonna become active. If you cast the sunlight on them, so they are hibernating, but they're very close to wakefulness. When we get warm days, there are insects that come out and about already. One of them is the blue bottle fly. This is probably the insect I'll see most often on a warm 0 degree or above day. The Blackfoot name, of course, again, Soyxisi, is a generic name for all flies, not just the blue bottle. And feeding on these guys, aside from magpies and others, you'll also find thin-legged wolf spiders, Xuawakatsiks. And the picture, makes this spider look really big. It's not very big in real life. Certainly, maybe around a half an inch long from tip of one leg to opposite tip of the other. It's not a really big spider, but they are out there hunting the flies. So the same place I'll see the blue bottle flies along the pathways along the edge of the river, I'll find these thin-legged wolf spiders. All right, so we're going to stop here on this slide, which is an image of the beginning of the melt of the river ice. We'll stop here, and I'll leave the other part of this lecture for part 2. And in this part 2, I'll be covering some plants and smaller birds and others, and what they're doing this time of year, as well as some of the deer, what they're doing. But yeah, we'll come back to come back to some of these images in part 2, just kind of scanning through. Again,